How am I gonna sing something that no one's ever heard before, or hopefully make people feel something they've never felt before? And at the end of the day, you just wanna make yourself proud.
A teenage boy who once curled up to sleep inside an abandoned zoo. A man who once lost his entire fortune in a single round at a casino. No one would ever imagine that this was the life of Bruno Mars, the brightest, most glamorous figure in 21st century black music. The star who blew the roof off Sophie Stadium took 24K magic around the globe and stayed on top of the Grammys for more than a decade. But behind that glittering shine is a truth far more painful than anyone could imagine. A childhood so poor he had to slip into hotels just to take a shower. An arrest for cocaine that nearly ended his entire career. And rumors of a $50 million gambling debt that left the world stunned. At 40, Bruno Mars's life is no longer a story of fame and sparkle, but a journey marked by pain, isolation, and brutality. The full truth about Bruno Mars is about to be revealed. The final tragedy is the most shocking of all. Are you ready? Bruno Mars, born Peter Jean Hernandez, came into the world on October 8, 1985, in a tiny house in Honolulu, where 8 people shared every inch of space just to get by. He carried both Puerto Rican and Filipino heritage, but the thing flowing strongest through him was music. His father, Peter Hernandez Sr., was an MC and drummer in Waikiki's tourist shows. His mother, Bernadette Bayo, was a dancer and part-time singer from the Philippines. At just 2 or 3 years old, he listened to his parents rehearse every night. But at 4 years old, one moment changed everything. During a show in Waikiki, the opening act didn't show up, so his father pushed little Bruno onto the stage just for fun. The audience froze. A 4-year-old boy walked out in a sparkling jumpsuit, flipping his hair, shaking his hips, winking, exactly like Elvis Presley. That night, the tip money stuffed into Bruno's tiny shoes was so much that his father had to pour it onto the table to count. From that moment on, Bruno wasn't just a kid. He became Little Elvis, the family's main source of income. Every night, that 4 to 5-year-old boy performed 2 shows a night, 5 days a week. While other children his age were in preschool, Bruno stood under scorching stage lights performing for crowds of drunk tourists. In 1990, at just 5 years old, he stood before 40,000 people at the Aloha Bowl halftime show and became Hawaii's child star. At 6, he was invited onto the Arsenio Hall show, the biggest breakthrough any child performer could dream of at the time. By 10, Bruno had already performed nearly 1,000 shows, more than many professional artists manage in 5 years. But the brighter the spotlight, the darker the shadows. The fall to rock bottom that changed the course of his life. When Bruno turned 12, the biggest tragedy of his childhood struck. His parents divorced. The family band, the only income supporting 6 children, collapsed instantly. His father lost his earnings, and his mother took his siblings to live elsewhere. Bruno, once Hawaii's child star, suddenly dropped into nothingness. No home, no money, no stage. He went from the family breadwinner to a homeless child living with his father and brother. It was the lowest point of his life, and the start of the fears that would follow him for years. With nowhere to stay, Bruno's father took his 2 sons around Honolulu looking for shelter. Some nights they slept in a beat-up '93 Cadillac so hot that Bruno had to keep the door open just to breathe. Some nights they climbed onto the roof of an abandoned building in Waikiki, curling up against the wind. But the worst place of all was an abandoned bird zoo. Cold concrete floors. The stench of bird droppings. Mosquitoes so thick they wrapped clothes around their legs to keep from being bitten. And worst of all, the peacocks screaming through the night, echoing like human cries in the dark. Bruno once said, "I couldn't sleep. Every time they screamed, I just wanted the sun to come up faster." With no place to shower, they slipped into hotels pretending to be guests, heading straight to the pool area just to get clean. Even so, every morning Bruno still went to school like any other kid, but people didn't look at him the same. Classmates mocked his secondhand clothes, laughed at his worn-out shoes and his hastily cut hair. No one knew he had slept on cold concrete the night before, or eaten dry instant noodles, because there was no money left. But Bruno refused to fall apart. To help his father, he performed at parties as a Michael Jackson impersonator, doing the moves he had memorized since he was little. He earned $75 a night, enough to keep life from swallowing him whole. That was Bruno Mars' childhood. A childhood glowing under stage lights, yet suffocatingly dark behind the scenes. A childhood no one would ever believe belonged to the man who would become the biggest star of his generation. When life in Hawaii became too small for his dreams, Bruno knew he had to leave. If he stayed, he would always remain Little Elvis. A beautiful memory of Hawaii, never a true artist. $600 and a dream. In pieces. In Los Angeles. One June morning in 2003, Bruno, freshly 18, packed a few shirts, 3 homemade demo CDs recorded in his tiny room, and slipped $600 into his pocket. He boarded a plane to Los Angeles with everything he owned stuffed into one old suitcase. No connections, no contract. But Los Angeles, the city of dreams shining on billboards, greeted Bruno with the damp, moldy smell of a $40 motel on Sunset Boulevard. Yellow-stained walls, a bathtub turning green with mold roaches crawling inside the cabinets. A week later, he had to move into a rundown studio in Koreatown, where 6 people crowded into a room so small, no one could stand up straight without bumping into someone else. Within a few months, Bruno moved 4 times, just to find something cheap enough to afford. That summer, there were weeks when Bruno Mars survived on 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box. But he stayed because of music. Yet the biggest shock wasn't hunger or hardship, it was the opportunity from Motown. The most humiliating contract of his career. In February 2004, Motown signed Bruno. A contract only 3 pages long. Bruno said the breakfast menu was thicker. Worse, Motown had no idea what to do with him. No producers, no direction, no long-term plan. 9 months later, Motown dropped him. Not a single song released. Bruno was crushed. He had bragged to his entire family that he finally had a launching pad. The night Motown fired him, Bruno sat in a room so small, he couldn't stretch his legs, gripping his phone, crying. To survive, he had to do something he never imagined lie to stay alive. Bruno applied to DJ at a small bar and lied that he knew how to use the DJ board, even though he had never touched a mixer in his life. On his first night, he wrecked the entire setlist, changed beats at the wrong time, and killed the crowd's mood. 2 nights later, he was fired. But the $75 he earned was enough to keep his phone the only tool he had to send demos, and hope someone in LA would hear his voice. That kick in the gut opened history. It was in those darkest days that Bruno met Philip Lawrence. 2 guys rejected by Motown, both broke, becoming friends and partners almost instantly. Philip had a beat-up 1999 Toyota Corolla. Bruno had a voice. Ari Levine had a small studio and equipment. The 3 made a deal they would pay Ari in 7-Eleven burritos. And that's how the Smeezingtons were born. They worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. They analyzed 1,000 hit songs to learn the DNA of pop. Whenever they found a tasty chord progression, they shouted, "That's a SME." The group built one of the most recognizable pop sounds of the 21st century, but still didn't have enough money for food. A chance. At the 43rd second, Bruno's sister Jaime handed a demo to Mike Lynn, Dr. Dre's right-hand man. Mike almost tossed it in the trash because Bruno's voice sounded like a sick squirrel. But at the 43rd second, Bruno hit a high note that made Mike rewind instantly. He called his assistant, "Find this kid. Now." Bruno flew to LA for the meeting. The meeting brought no contract, no money, not even a promise. But it gave Bruno something far more important, the belief that his voice, after so many bitter failures, had finally reached someone. And that belief kept him alive in a city that had shattered countless dreams. Bruno stayed in LA, 1 month then another, even as life tightened around his neck. Bruno and Philip Lawrence wrote Lost with everything they had left inside them. It was the song they believed would one day make their names. But that month, their landlord knocked on the door demanding rent. They had no choice. They sold Lost to Menudo for $20,000. That money kept them alive, paid rent, paid off cards. And that extra time ended up saving Bruno Mars's career. The first explosion came in 2009. The Smeezingtons wrote the chorus for Flo Rida's Right Round. The song was released and instantly shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, selling 636,000 copies. in its first week a digital record at the time, and later surpassing 12 million worldwide. Bruno didn't get official credit, because he only sang the demo, but it was the first time he saw something he created truly take off. The first signal that his life might finally turn. Right after came Nothing on You for B.O.B., another song that went straight to #1 Billboard and became multi-platinum. Bruno's voice wasn't even the original choice, but once the demo played, the whole team agreed no one else could replace it. Before Bruno even debuted as a solo artist, the songs he wrote for others had already sold over 15 million downloads. He became a hitmaker, while still a nobody behind the curtain. Then came 2010, when Bruno stepped into the spotlight himself with Just the Way You Are. The song hit #1 Billboard, went 12x. Platinum, won a Grammy for Best Male Pop Vocal, and pushed his debut album Doo-Wops and Hooligans past 15 million copies sold. His performance fee jumped from $250 to $50,000 a show in a single year, a nearly unheard-of leap in pop music. In 2014, Bruno teamed up with Mark Ronson and created Uptown Funk, one of the biggest songs of the decade. They recorded it 86 times. Bruno made Mark redo almost every breath. The result was a song that stayed #1 for 14 weeks, racked up more than 5 billion YouTube views, over 5 billion streams, and generated an estimated $150 to $200 million. This milestone put Bruno in the tier of artists earning $1.5 to $2 million per show, making him one of the highest-paid performers on Earth. But success couldn't stop the industry's disdain. Super Bowl 2014, rejected twice, and the fight to earn respect. In 2013, when the NFL met to discuss who would headline the 2014 Super Bowl halftime show, Bruno Mars's name appeared on the candidate list, and immediately got crossed out, not once, but twice. The reason that surfaced later enraged fans. He's just a B-list artist, too small, not big enough to carry the Super Bowl on his own. Worse, the NFL suggested Bruno appear only as a guest in another superstar show. For someone who performed 1,000 shows before he turned 10, it was humiliating. Bruno stayed silent for a few days. Then he delivered the answer that stunned the entire NFL boardroom. If I can't perform alone, then I won't perform at all. It was an ultimatum from an artist who didn't even have a Nostra One album yet, an artist the media still called the kid from Hawaii. If Bruno failed, not only would he be buried alive, but the NFL itself would be dragged and mocked. But in the end, they nodded. Bruno took the show. February 2, 2014 became the biggest victory of Bruno Mars's life. The final result, Bruno's Super Bowl halftime performance, became the highest-rated halftime show of the decade. Higher than Beyoncé, higher than Madonna, higher than Coldplay. It shattered every doubt. It shattered Bruno's own limits. It shattered the not big enough label the NFL slapped on him. He became a global superstar without needing anyone to vouch for him. After the insane success of Uptown Funk, the world wondered, what will Bruno Mars do next? How do you top a song that stayed #1 for 14 weeks? 24K Magic, the era of a king. After 3 years away to finish the album, Bruno Mars entered his peak again with 24K Magic. In 2018, as Bruno walked the Grammy red carpet, many reporters predicted 24K Magic might win 1 or 2 awards. But that night, Bruno delivered one of the greatest Grammy sweeps in history. He took home 6 awards in a single night: Album of the Year, Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best R&B Album, Best R&B Song, Best R&B Performance. Bruno didn't just succeed, he ruled. In 2017, 2018, Bruno launched the 24K Magic World Tour, and every revenue record began to fall. 3.5 million tickets, sold $367 million in gross revenue. Top 10 highest-grossing tours of all time, beating U2, Gaga, Coldplay in multiple markets. VIP tickets alone went as high as $6,500. Fans waited 10 hours just to get inside the venue. The entire world agreed Bruno Mars was the #1 live performer on the planet. In 2021, Bruno joined forces with Anderson. Pack to form Silk Sonic. When Leave the Door Open dropped, the world went silent for 3 seconds, then lost its mind. The song shot to #1. The performance video looked straight out of the 70s, and once again, Bruno proved no one on this planet makes music the way Bruno Mars does, and no one can replace him. From a kid surviving on 99-cent tacos from a 3-page contract tossed aside by a label, Bruno Mars became an artist with over $1.2 billion in career revenue, hundreds of millions of listeners, dozens of records, and a name that cannot be replaced in 21st century pop music. A wild, impossible journey. The golden stages, the sparkling suits, the 24K magic era, the Grammys, the $100 million tours. All of it makes people believe Bruno Mars lives a perfect life. But behind all that shine, there's a story he hid for over a decade. Silent wounds and rumors powerful enough to destroy anyone. Scandals, secrets, tragedies. The dark side of Bruno Mars. The world rarely hears. The 2010 cocaine incident, the stain that nearly destroyed Bruno Mars. Las Vegas, early morning. September 19, 2010. Bruno Mars stepping into the brightest moment of his career. Just the Way You Are had just hit #1 when fate decided to slap him across the face. That night, Bruno attended an after-show party. He was only 25, newly crowned as pop's rising star. And within minutes, everything almost disappeared. Around 1:30 a.m., Bruno walked into a private restroom in the VIP area. No one knows what happened behind that door. Only that security began to notice when a man was in the bathroom a bit too long. On the shelf, police later recorded 2.6 grams of cocaine. Bruno didn't deny, it didn't yell, didn't resist. He simply took a breath, looked at security, and said a sentence the police report documented word for word. "I've never done anything like this before." You understand, right? It was desperate. Honest, the plea of someone who knew he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He was handcuffed, escorted out of the VIP area, walking down the long hallway of the Hard Rock Hotel, where just hours earlier, he had been welcomed as a rising star. The next morning, his mugshot slicked hair, white shirt, hit TMZ, Atlantic Records. The label betting everything on Bruno as their new ace panicked. They knew for a new artist, a drug scandal means a 90% chance of career death. On February 4, 2011, Bruno went to court and pled guilty. The court ordered him to pay a $2,000 fine, complete 200 hours of community service, attend a drug education program, and stay under deferred adjudication for 12 months. If he stayed clean for a year and met all conditions, the case would be wiped clean. And that's exactly what happened. Bruno completed everything, and the record was officially cleared in 2012. In February 2011, right after court, Bruno said, "In an interview with GQ, I did something stupid. I regret it." It remains his only formal apology. Even though the record was cleared, antis used it to label him an addict. Tabloids brought it up every time he was about to release new music. Some younger fans who only discovered Bruno after 2014 even believed he had once been heavily addicted. The incident became a scratch that never truly disappears, even if it couldn't destroy his career. The gambling obsession, a secret few people know. Bruno Mars is always remembered for being playful, mischievous, full of charm, but there's something he hides deeply. Bruno once admitted a shocking truth: "I started gambling before I was even old enough." The first time he played was with small chips in a Hawaii casino, sneaking in underage just to sit at the poker table. The rush of winning and losing, the adrenaline, the thrill of chance, became something he was hooked on from a young age. He once lost every dollar he had in a single poker hand. He went broke again playing blackjack, and that followed him all the way to Vegas, where he later became MGM's most valuable residency star. People in the industry often said every artist has a bad habit. Bruno's is gambling. The rumor of a $50 million gambling debt. On March 15, 2024, what seemed like an ordinary morning suddenly became the darkest day of Bruno Mars's life. NewsNation released a headline: "Bruno Mars owes $50 million in gambling debt to MGM Resorts." Within 48 hours, what sounded impossible turned into the biggest media firestorm involving Bruno Mars in over a decade. The scary part wasn't the rumor. The scary part was that everyone believed it instantly. Bruno had admitted he started gambling before he was of age. He had talked about losing all his money in a poker game as a kid. He lived almost year-round in Las Vegas, where temptation sits under every neon light. And above all, he earned up to $1.5 million per night, a number that made people think if anyone could blow $50 million in a casino, it would be Bruno Mars. In Vegas, Bruno isn't just a singer, he's a money machine. The diamond of MGM's residency empire. The face generating hundreds of millions in profit every year. And when the rumor exploded, MGM headquarters went into immediate emergency mode. MGM knew they had to put out the fire instantly. On the afternoon of March 15th, they released a press statement with ice-cold wording: Bruno Mars does not owe MGM a single dollar. The information circulating is entirely false. Right after they issued an even stronger declaration, the relationship between Bruno and MGM is a long-term partnership. There is no such thing as MGM owning Bruno because of debt, as tabloids claimed. Bruno is the star who brings massive revenue and is one of MGM's top strategic partners. MGM wanted the world to understand clearly Bruno Mars is not a debtor. He is the ace card. But Bruno Mars didn't break because of gambling rumors, he broke because of something else. Music rights, the copyright lawsuits, the nightmare called Uptown Funk. When Uptown Funk was released, it was the moment Bruno Mars stood on top of the world. But while Bruno and Mark Ronson were celebrating success, somewhere inside America's law firms, a storm was quietly forming. Just a few months after the song hit #1, the band Collage, an 80s funk group, suddenly filed a lawsuit. They claimed Uptown Funk sounded like their song, Young Girls. Bruno heard the news while getting ready for tour. He froze for a few seconds, then sighed. Again. To the public, Bruno was a winner. Behind the scenes, he was stepping into a 4-year legal marathon. No shortcuts, no escape. In the second year, another group sued. In the third year, another group came. Each group demanded money. Each group insisted Uptown Funk sounds like our song. Lawyers rotated, sending letters to Bruno, Mark Ronson, Sony, RCA, Universal. Courts, deadlines, filings, meetings, month after month. To fans, Uptown Funk is the happiest song of the century. To Bruno, it was the song that gave him the most sleepless nights of his life. Mark Ronson once said, "Every time we won an award, someone else would file another lawsuit." Bruno often told his team, "I'm not afraid of performing for 70,000 people, but I'm terrified of a lawyer's email at 7 in the morning." By 2018, the final lawsuit was settled. Uptown Funk kept all its rights. It stayed on platforms. It kept its awards. It kept its revenue. But the emotional price Bruno paid was worthy of being called a nightmare. While the media tore apart his scandals, while Vegas whispered about gambling debt and million-dollar contracts, few people knew that Bruno Mars had loved someone deeply. Jessica Caban, the quiet woman behind the legend. In 2011, when Bruno was still just a young artist trying to shake off the demo singer label, he met Jessica Caban in a hotel restaurant in New York. No pickup line, no introduction, just two strangers, staring at each other for 40 minutes as if the crowded dining room disappeared. That night they talked until 2 a.m. Less than a year later, Jessica left New York, left her family, left her fragile career, and moved to Los Angeles, just to be with a man who at the time still wasn't certain he would succeed. Their early days in LA were nothing like a romance movie. Jessica slept on an air mattress. Bruno flew everywhere singing, performing, grinding to keep a dream alive, a dream even more fragile than their relationship. But slowly, they built a life together, a small quiet home in Studio City, a dog named Geronimo running around the yard, and nights where Bruno played guitar while Jessica listened. Yet the strangest part is this: Bruno Mars almost never speaks about his love life publicly. 13 years together, and only 3 red carpet appearances. Bruno explained simply, "The less people see of your love, the easier it survives." Many people whispered that "When I Was Your Man" was Bruno's apology to Jessica. And he said one sentence that made the world's blood run cold. Recording that song felt like bleeding onto the tape. But at the end of 2024, the internet suddenly shook. Fans noticed Jessica began deleting all their anniversary photos. No more happy anniversary, no trace of Bruno. Then, in January 2025, under a photo Jessica posted on the beach, a fan asked bluntly, "Did you and Bruno break up?" Jessica replied with just 15 words, "I'll always be happy and proud of everything he has achieved." From that moment on, everything became even more uncertain. They still follow each other. They still co-own the Studio City home. Some sources say they still meet quietly once a month. Some say Bruno flew to New York alone for one final conversation. No one knows the truth. Bruno won't speak. And in the way he's always lived, silence is the most painful answer of all. The greatest pain, losing his mother. At the peak of his career. If there was anything that completely broke Bruno Mars, it wasn't the cocaine arrest or the $50 million rumor. It was June 1, 2013, when his mother Bernadette passed away suddenly from a brain aneurysm. Bruno was on his European tour. His phone rang at 2 a.m. His manager said only 3 words. "Bruno, come home." He flew back but didn't make it in time to see his mother one last time. For 3 days, Bruno didn't say a word. His team said it was the first time they had ever seen him fall apart. Later, in a rare interview, Bruno said, "I lost all my strength in that moment." After his mother's death, Bruno wanted to quit music and collapsed so deeply he disappeared from the media. After 2013, Bruno almost shut his heart. He said, "Music used to be the reason I existed. But when my mom passed, I didn't see that reason anymore." Bruno Mars, the man who generated billions for Las Vegas, yet didn't even own a home. To the public, Bruno Mars is the king of pure gold, 24K magic luxury suites, the most expensive residency in Vegas, even praised as the man who revived the entire gambling city. But behind the lights is a truth almost impossible to believe. For years, while Vegas earned hundreds of millions of dollars from each of his residency seasons, Bruno lived in rented houses. No golden mansion, no private penthouse, no multi-million-dollar estate. He spent most of his income supporting his family, paying his team, and investing in music, to the point that at age 35, Bruno finally signed ownership papers for a home under his own name. It was one of the harshest ironies of modern stardom. A man who made Las Vegas rich, made MGM rich, made thousands of entertainment workers rich, yet lived like an artist just starting out in Hollywood. Bruno may not wear diamond Rolexes, but he spends a fortune on 1970s analog studios vintage gear old school instruments. He once said, "I don't buy gold. My music is the gold." Even without showing off or living extravagantly, Bruno remains one of the richest artists in the world. By 2025, his estimated net worth is $180 to $200 million, a number many dream of. 2024, 2025, the most glorious era of Bruno Mars' life. If the 2010s turned Bruno Mars into a superstar, then 2024, 2025 turned him into a legend. When Lady Gaga suddenly posted 8 p.m. PST, "Bring tissues," no one expected the internet to explode hours later. At exactly 12:01 a.m., "Die with a Smile" dropped and every music platform shook. In one day, the song reached 27.4 million streams, breaking Adele's record. It held #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 18 weeks. Went platinum in 32 countries, and generated more than $1 million a day at its peak. The world called it the greatest comeback of Bruno Mars's career. But behind the perfect hit was chaos. No one knew. Bruno recorded the final vocal at 4:12 a.m. hoarse and trembling from exhaustion, right after he smashed a tequila bottle against the studio wall from pressure. The glass-breaking sound at 3:18 in the song, "Not an Effect." It was real, kept exactly from the moment Bruno felt he might collapse right there. A global hit, born out of chaos. AP, the greatest East-West crossover in K-pop history. When Rosé released the 9-second teaser for AP, the world was stunned as the video hit 42 million views in just 12 hours. No one knew Bruno was behind the instrumentation and background vocals until the song officially dropped. Non-release day, AP debuted at #3 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming the highest-charting female K-pop collaboration in history. The music video hit 100 million views in 19 hours. Banned. In less than a year, the song surpassed 3 billion streams. Bit was the moment the industry had to admit Bruno Mars was no longer just an American star. He had become a global force, the Sophie Stadium night, when everything reached its sacred peak. It was August 17, 2024. Rosé's solo show was about to end when the entire stadium went dark. 5 seconds of total blackout, the crowd held its breath. Then a burst of golden light illuminated the center of the field. Bruno Mars walked out, 70,000 people screamed at 124 decibels louder than a jet engine. 1.2 tons of confetti fell like a snowstorm, the ground shaking like an earthquake. This wasn't a cameo anymore. It was the coronation of Bruno Mars, in the era he ruled. The next day, AP surged 380% in streams, climbing back into the Billboard Top 10 after nearly a year. It became the most successful collaboration of 2024. People saw Bruno Mars on stage, but that was only the version the world wanted to see. Behind the lights, behind the perfect 11-second high notes, behind 15 years of sold-out tours, was a man living with wounds that never heal. The mental tragedy of a genius named Bruno Mars. The greatest obsession. Losing his voice and losing everything. Some artists fear failure. Some fear aging. Bruno fears the day he opens his mouth and nothing comes out. For nearly 8 months, he struggled with constant hoarseness. Every morning he woke up and had to test a few notes to see, how much do I still have today? If I lose my voice, I lose myself. Locking himself in the studio for 27 hours. The brutal mental battle. His team recalled that Bruno once locked himself inside the studio for 27 hours straight. No food, no sleep, no talking to anyone. He sang the same 4-second phrase over 200 times until his body gave out and he needed IV fluids just to continue. Not because of label pressure, not because he feared failure. Bruno Mars was competing with the best version of himself from yesterday. A ruthless race no one can win forever. 15 years without a day off. A life consumed by the spotlight. From 2010 to 2025, his entire team could remember only 8 or 9 days when Bruno truly rested. Every other day he was touring, recording, arranging, writing, choreographing. Not a single day of actually living, only working. The spotlight swallowed his youth. Perfection swallowed his soul. The tragedy of self-doubt. When Bruno accepts a Grammy, people think he's confident, powerful, unstoppable. But few know Bruno never re-watches the moment he receives an award. He once admitted, "Every time I hear my name, I always think, why me? Do I really deserve this?" That is the dark side of genius. The greater the talent, the greater the success, the deeper the self-doubt. At 40, Bruno Mars stands where hundreds of artists spend a lifetime trying and failing to reach. In 2025, Spotify announced he reached 150 million monthly listeners, surpassing even several pop legends. His performance with Rosé shook the entire SoFi Stadium. Die with a Smile with Lady Gaga set global streaming records. Silk Sonic swept the Grammys, bringing Motown back to the modern era like a storm. In a time when many stage stars rely on playback, Bruno Mars drives fans crazy for one simple thing. He performs 100% live. And better than the studio version. Career-wise, there's nothing left to debate. Bruno Mars belongs to the rare group of artists who touch legacy while still alive. But the brighter the light, the deeper the darkness. He lost the person he loved most, his mother. His 13-year relationship fractured, and he carries obsessions he never fully speaks about. So when people ask Bruno Mars is successful, but is he happy? The answer, even if fans don't want to say, it has been written clearly in his eyes these past years. Legacy and influence. The unerasable marks of Bruno Mars. When people look back at Bruno Mars's journey, they don't just see a successful artist. They see someone who changed how the world listens to music. From 2010 to 2025, no artist has a win record like Bruno. More songs surpassing 1 billion streams than any other male artist of his era. 2 consecutive decades with global #1 hits. One of the rare artists who can chart top streaming in the US, Europe, South America, and Asia at the same time. Many younger artists model their lifestyle after him. Charlie Puth learned vocal mixing from Bruno Anderson. Pac found his drum groove through Bruno, and countless K-pop idols trained their vocals using Grenade. Bruno doesn't belong to one market. He connects with everyone: retro fans, the TikTok generation, R&B lovers, K-pop audiences, Latin listeners. Not many can do that. Bruno became the kind of artist who transcends cultural borders like Michael Jackson or Prince, the ones who touched the entire world at once. Which Bruno Mars song is your favorite? Comment below. If you want to keep exploring the stories behind the spotlight, If you believe every legend has a dark side that was never told, hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Don't miss the truths Hollywood never wants you to hear.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast.
There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on the screen.